Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. So I'm John Ambrose, and I'll be talking about embedding digital career literacy within careers education and guidance programs this morning. So there's only a few people so far into this session, so I'm just going to wait a minute or so, if that's okay, and then we'll get started. So if you've got any pre-thoughts or questions, just post them into the chat facility, and then we'll be able to keep on track and see if I can answer anything as we go along at all. Also, I mean, if we stay quite a small group, it might mean that we've got quite an intimate session here then, really. So there might be the opportunity to contribute even more then, really, through perhaps even turning cameras off and asking questions verbally potentially. So, but we'll see just how many numbers we've got first before we make any promises along those lines. So we'll just start in literally a couple of minutes' time. We'll give people to relax and enter into the room. So just while we're waiting for others to join, I mean, if you wouldn't mind perhaps just entering into the chat box there, just anything particular about your particular context then. So whether or not you work with adults, you work with students in schools or colleges. So just be quite helpful, just to be able to make sure that I can, differentiate the content as I go through to your context. So any help along those kind of lines would be really useful. So just pop something into the chat then about any questions you might have, any comments you might have. But also, it'd be really helpful to know what kind of context that you work in. So if you're working with adults or children, or kind of like university students, perhaps college students, so that'd be really helpful. Great, thanks, Hannah. So higher education, excellent. 13 to 25 EHCPs, smashing. Thank you, Paul. That's really, really helpful. Careers advisor, year 9 to 13, excellent. Thank you, Catherine. Great. Lovely. Right, I'm just turn my camera on there, so we'll get started. Thank you, Rachel. I just wanted to give people time to come in, but it looks like we're going to be a relatively small group today. But let's get started none the same. So do keep those coming in through the chat box. It's just really helpful for me. We've got a small group, so we should be able to interact quite a lot through things like chat and stuff along the way. But before we go into any of that, we ought to really start by introducing the session and giving you a bit more background about the work I'm doing with it then, really. So my name's John Ambrose, and this session is all about embedding digital career literacy, including social media, within careers education and guidance programs. Now, digital career literacy may not be a term that you're familiar with yet, but hopefully by the end of the session, that will change and you'll start to think a bit more about how you can bring this into your work. Lost that. Yeah, so just a bit of a background about what we're hoping to cover in this session then. So first of all, we'll look at this term digital career literacy and we'll consider its importance in a modern career support program, which I think is a term I'll try and use throughout then, because it looks like whether we're working with university students, NEET learners, young people 16 to 25 with EHCPs, we're looking at a support program, career support program, and obviously we can utilize this to make sure that it fits for us. We need to, within that, we'll think about how we support people develop skills in analyzing sources of information, especially in an era around fake news and things. We also need to look at the role of social media in a modern, up-to-date careers program, and we'll look at the importance of personal branding and developing that online presence along the way. So just give you a little bit of an introduction into my background. So I am a partner of Complete Careers. So we're a small company based in the East Midlands in Lincolnshire, and we've been going for 5 years kind of thing. So I'm the director of Complete Careers. Been working in careers. This is my 20th year working in careers this year, and most of that has been in Lincolnshire through connections and local authority roles. I did a bit of lecturing at Nottingham Trent. I've also worked as an associate with ISEGS, University of Derby, and I'm the director of something called Career Mark as well, which is through Complete Careers, is our licensed awarding body for the National Quality Award in careers in England, which is the Quality in Careers Standard. I've got a master's in careers guidance, and I've been championing now the role of social media and careers programs for at least about 6 or 7 years. And that picture at the bottom there is at ISEGS in Derby, and it's with Tristan Hooley and David Andrews and Nikki Moore there. And it's us launching a resource that we produced to help people master digital career literacy kind of thing. And I'll come on to that a bit later on. But this is all around Tristan Hooley's there because a lot of the work that he's done on this, dating back to 2012, really sets the foundations for digital career literacy. So I think I'll start pretty much there really by introducing the background and the context. So first of all, most of us seem to be working with learners by the look of things on the chat kind of thing, but this is equally relevant for adults too. But we've got 5 generations in the workforce, arguably probably for the first time in society. So we've got people that are working longer and longer into their 70s. But then we've also got this Gen Z kind of thing, Generation Z, that the young people born after 2000. So, the millennials or the digital natives kind of thing, which are coming into the workforce. And I think this is really significant because what we've got to look at is how the workforce needs to adapt to be able to bring in Gen Z kind of thing, but also equally what we need to do kind of thing, what young people need to do to be able to adapt and utilize their skills and what you bring into the world of work. So I think this is quite interesting to look at with the dynamics of that as we monitor this over the next 5 or 10 years kind of thing, because a bit of a sweeping generalization, but we tend to associate Generation Z, people born after year 2000, with being quite tech savvy then. So understanding, technology, computers, tablets kind of thing. And obviously people that are born before the year 2000 is more having to learn those skills, having to migrate over to those skill set kind of thing. Now, obviously there are variations to that, but that's a generalized pattern really. And I think it's quite significant because although young people certainly have a skill set around technology, or in the main have a skill set around use of technology, it's starting to think about how they use that for the world of work and having a more professional outlook of their skill set and technology and applying that to the world of work. That is essentially what digital career literacy is all about. It's also just as useful, though, for those that are that are adult clients then, and they've migrated over to technology, to think, well, as they're learning those skill set for technology, they've also got to learn a bit more about how to use it in a context that's appropriate for work and career. And what that looks like is this. This is the 7 C's of digital career literacy. So it was first introduced around about 2012, and the source is Professor Tristan Hooley, and you can find out more about this. I'll send these slides over, and you can click onto these links then and access the piece that Tristan wrote in his blog, Adventures into Career Development. But what the 7 C's of digital career literacy introduces is that although young people and people that have migrated over to technology have learnt in general those skills of technology, what they need to be able to do to be able to be successful in career planning in the 21st century is to learn a series of skill sets then to help make sure that they use the skills that they've got, but to apply them in a more professional context then in the world of work and career. And that starts with changing then. So it starts to recognize, what we'll do is we'll pick up on a couple of these points in more detail as we go through the session. It's basically around these 7 C's. Some of them we'll have to skip over because of time. So I'll just briefly introduce all 7 now, and then we'll look at a couple of them under the microscope a bit further. Now, so first of all, changing is recognizing that the world of work is changing. There's no such thing as job for life anymore. We've got robotics, AI. We've been learning a lot about that already this morning and yesterday. And we need to be thinking about how that will impact for the world of work on the people that we work with and our client group. We've then also got to look at how we collect the information. There's a sea of information out there. And we've got to first of all find out how we find that, how we find the good stuff. And then when we find it, we've got to make sure that we understand, how to critique it. There's so much out there, and we've got to start to help people to understand and learn the skills to be able to distinguish between objectivity and bias. What's good information, what's not good information, what's a credible source and what isn't a credible source, to help with their career planning. Then there's also a sense of connecting too. So, we know with career, it's all about networking. It always has been. But obviously nowadays, networking is far bigger than just the local network. It's more about the online network too. So joining appropriate platforms and starting to think and plan through how to do that and for what purposes. The other parts that we're going to pick up on in more detail in this session is going to be communicating, creating, and curating. So communicating, first of all, is starting to use the appropriate language on the appropriate platform. It's this term called netiquette. So it's about using the right etiquette on the net, essentially, on the online platforms then. So whether it's going to be the social medias, whether it's going to be emails, or if it's going to be things like video conferencing and FaceTime and things like that, it's about using the right etiquette when communicating to employers and stuff. And then we're talking about creating, and here we mean about making sure that we've got, content online that can help us really to be able to get jobs and advance in our career pathways. And finally, curating, and this is more about seeing ourselves as a brand and recognizing that, we've got to make sure that it's, first of all, clean, and secondly, that, we get the information that we want out there to the people we want to see, that we want to see it, and secondly, that the content that we don't want to people to see, we keep nice and private and secure with those that we know and trust around us. So that's the premise of the 7 C's of digital career literacy. And what we're just going to do in this session is we're just going to get to grips with some of the more important aspects of it and start to think about how we develop our career support programs to be able to help our clients to A, understand this, and B, utilize their skill set of technology with a more professional outlook to be able to help them to be able to really get on and go far in their pathways. So first of all, let's look at collecting. So I've skipped past changing because we've looked at a lot of that so far today and yesterday. So what is collecting? Well, it's the ability to find, manage and retrieve careers information. So it sounds a bit of a simple thing then, really, because we can all just go onto Google and stuff, but how do we do that more effectively? There are hints and tips to be able to get to where you want to go quicker and more effectively. A question, first of all, how many websites are there in the world, would you say? Anyone like to be brave and hazard a guess and enter that into the chat box? I'll just pause for a moment to give you a chance to do that. Billions, absolutely no idea. Absolutely. So a billion, oh right, okay, we're getting very close, to be honest. So the answer is actually 1.75 billion. So it's absolutely huge. But the interesting part is that most of those are inactive or lie dormant kind of thing, because they're not, regularly populated. With so many websites out there, there's just an impossible task to keep them all up to date. So some people create them and forget about them, or just keep them going in the background as life gets in the way. But it means that only about a quarter of the population of websites are actually active and kept up to date, kind of thing. So the chances are we're going to stumble across things that aren't terribly reliable or helpful. It's also about how we get through that information to get to what we want. And there are more advanced techniques that we can use, such as like phrase searches and negative searches, to be able to extract what we don't want, or just keep together the things that we do want, and trying to help our client group to be able to get to the information they want, kind of thing, and kind of like filter out a lot of the stuff that they don't want, initially in your search terms, kind of thing. But also, it's not just about finding the information, it's about critiquing that information. And it's about helping our clients, young people and adults, to be able to develop this ability to evaluate, analyze the provenance of, and assess the usefulness of careers information. Now, if anybody's active on social media, certainly over the last 5 or 6 years, then anything from things like referendums of independence through to general elections, and right the way through to EU referendum, to Cambridge Analytica, and all kinds of different aspects there. And even now with things like COVID and view sets and things, you'll see that people often, take things on face value as being accurate. And they tend to get their information from all these kinds of different channels, really. So either from Google, and just looking at what's on there on the first page, from Instagram, from Facebook, from YouTube, from Twitter, kind of thing. The kind of things they find all the time, and the kind of things that things retweets all the way through, and people just kind of like pick that information up and act on it, really. And also, I mean, for example, if you wanted a bit of a source to be able to use with your client group, on Netflix, there's something called The Social Dilemma, really, and that gives a really interesting insight into how these kind of like big platforms work. And this is why, when you're talking about something like, I don't know, talking about garden furniture, all of a sudden it pops up on your Facebook feed, on your Google feeds and stuff. So, it's about how information can be manipulated and how people can be manipulated. And it's all about the data there. So it's about, first of all, educating people to know, well, there are sources of information. There's a massive information. And the first thing we need to do is develop the skill set to be able to critique that effectively. And that's really important to be able to do that. It's also important to notice that, okay, yeah, it's not just critiquing things from sources on Google and YouTube and Twitter and stuff. It's also thinking about, well, even in the world of work that we operate in careers, there's so many websites that we use and that we'll signpost people to. And a lot of them with things like .gov.uk, .org.uk, you think, well, they're going to be up to date, accurate kind of thing, which we'd definitely expect, certainly. But we can't necessarily expect them to be completely objective, in all honesty, because when we're looking at things like, teaching, armed forces, apprenticeships, we're talking about not going to uni, we're talking about a range of things such as STEM. These are obviously designed to put a spotlight into these either career pathways or opportunity choices. And obviously young people and adults need to understand that they've got to be able to understand that and accept that there's going to be this degree of objectivity there, of bias, there. So, and it's obviously really only the National Careers Service one that's probably the most objective there. As an example, things like the armed forces with their, because it isn't an advertisement, that they're going to talk a little bit more about the opportunity to train far and to be able to see the world and to be able to earn money whilst you're doing that. They won't obviously be kind of like highlighting on the front page there the risks there that are obviously associated with being on the front line there too. So critiquing is a really important aspect of this 7 C's of digital career literacy. The other part then, just moving forward within this, is about connecting. And I think this is something that we've really got to encourage clients to be able to manage with care and have a bit more of a strategy about how to go on and connect with people on this online world then. Because the temptation really is to just, I'm thinking about applying for something or changing work, or what happens when I leave college or leave uni. So I'm just going to go on and I'm going to connect with absolutely everyone I can think of that may have a role to play in supporting me. So, but the problem is that what that does is gives a bit of a scattergun approach to this then, really. And also what tends to happen as a default on a lot of the social media platforms, especially things like LinkedIn, is that what it gets you to do as soon as you've set up your account, it wants you to bring in all your contacts kind of thing, and contacts of contacts and stuff, to try and make it as big as possible. But if you do that straight away, you're just shining a light on how ill prepared you are, because you haven't even done your profile yet. You haven't even got a picture online yet there, which shows the world that you want to connect with, that, you're doing this quite heart-baked in terms of the approach, really. So obviously it's more about, keeping things draft until you've got things set up. You've got your profile set up. You've got your picture looking good. You've got your experience set up. And you're thinking more about what you're going to do with your social networks, not just with LinkedIn, with broader networks too, such as Twitter and Facebook and a whole range of others that I'll bring to your attention in a moment or so. So it's about thinking about making sure you've got this set up, making sure the sites that are online about you with open access that you want to get out there are saying broadly similar things then, really, about who you are, what you're trying to do. And it's also about thinking, well, who can help, why, and when do I want to network? I think the important aspect is to kind of recognize, really, that you tend to network for one of 3 aspects then. So you're trying to get either information to be able to help you proceed with your career pathway, or you might be asked to get some kind of support, or it might be you want some direct experience to include things like job advancements, or you want a promotion or an opportunity in work kind of thing. So those are the main reasons why. And I think what people find it quite helpful when you are connecting is making sure that people understand the etiquette of networking too. So it's always really quite polite as a LinkedIn user when you're asking to connect with somebody, if you just drop them a quick message in the text to be able to say, well, who you are and, what kind of things that you'd quite like to, to network about, then really what the reasons for wanting to join. So a little bit of communication in that message can go a long way, rather than just so-and-so wants to connect with you. So it's about, being a bit more transparent in the approach with that. So just moving on to that communication, because obviously, mentioned before, I've been working in careers now, this is my 20th year. And obviously the way in which we communicate to employers has changed drastically in that time. And so we've got to make sure that we've got this ability to communicate for the 21st century. And that's about the ability to interact effectively across a range of different platforms, and to understand this term netiquette of different interactions and to use them in the context of career. And I think what we mean by that is that we are using a whole range of things now in the way in which we communicate with employers, or communicate with people that will help us to be able to get on and go far in our career. And that could be Twitter. It's also things like, basic things like email. So we use email all the time. Young people, we use email all the time. But obviously, we've got to think about what's the appropriate etiquette to use in the language with email, because we'll probably have to send even our CV and cover letter, we'll probably have to send off via email. So we've got to think about the appropriate kind of, way to be able to form that so that it's right and it's helpful. We've also got to look at things like Zoom, Teams, Skype, webinars and stuff like that. Now, obviously, this past 12 months has shone a huge spotlight into these platforms. And obviously, young people and adults are using them all the time, but not necessarily in a way that would be appropriate to use when communicating with adults for a job interview, for example. And more companies, pre-pandemic, were utilizing video conference software to be able to do a bit of a pre-interview kind of screening. So we know that's going to happen more and more. And obviously, since the pandemic, more and more employers have realized just how efficient that can be. So we can only expect more and more online interviews kind of thing, either instead of or as well as kind of like actual interviews. So it's about learning that skill set then, and some basics there about where to sit, what to set up around you in terms of lighting and making sure you haven't got a messy background, eye contact, right length and things like that. It's all vitally important to make sure you think things through and you've made efforts to be able to make sure that things look appropriate. There's also things like text message as well, and Twitter. So we might well be contacting people. We've had job adverts that have asked people to be able to, apply via text message. So we've seen that over the last 5 or 10 years, which is really interesting. It's obviously learning those skills to be quite concise with your language there to get the point across. And then obviously things like social media sites like LinkedIn, about how to put the right kind of message on there then. So making sure that you're putting enough attention on there. It looks good, it looks professional, because we know a lot of jobs are never advertised, and sites such as LinkedIn are breeding grounds for headhunters kind of thing. So we know that. So it's not to say any of this replaces traditional methods such as cover letters and CVs, but it's to say that CVs and cover letters, alone these days are no longer enough. It's about making sure we give everything enough and equal attention. There's also things like the recruitment sites as well. So obviously these have been around for some time now, but they tend to be used, especially for getting that first job kind of thing, quite often. But I mean, we advertised as a company for a data and finance officer in last summer, and I was amazed really that how many applicants came through, which isn't terribly amazing kind of thing in the current climate, but also how the caliber of the applicants that were coming through too, in terms of levels of qualifications, even degrees and masters for a relatively basic post that we're advertising. But that said, how many people actually changed their cover letter or CV kind of thing, was quite horrifying, to be honest. So, most of them at least changed the address, though some of them didn't, kind of thing, about who they were sending it to. But obviously in the actual text of the letter, a lot of them were making reference to other companies they'd applied for rather than my company. So it's about making sure we get the basics right at least, but also that we're applying the same thing as kind of like differentiating and making sure that we tailor the cover letter and the CV to the employer that we're applying to. And obviously there's a temptation using these sites that we've got something stored, so we'll just modify it a little bit and that will do, but it won't do, is the message really. So let's move on and let's finish off by looking at creating and curating. So creating here is the ability to create online content that represents your interest, skills, and careers history. So this is setting up sites then really to be able to help you move on and move far in your career. And there are various things here that you can do, a whole range of different levels. So for example, even things like Facebook is still the most widest used social media platform kind of thing. There's also Facebook's jobs now that you can find and post opportunities there and search for opportunities in your local area. And it's also a good way to let your network know what you're looking for, in terms of opportunities, experience, or work. And that's something that we shouldn't be underrated really about how significant that can be. Equally, you've got Twitter there, a very widely used platform, but you can follow absolutely everyone on Twitter, the Prime Minister, your favorite footballer kind of thing, the local company that you might want to work for, or the CEO of a big company kind of thing, to be able to follow what they're doing and try and engage in some kind of conversation with them through using their hashtags and their mentions and stuff in what you're doing. Google Plus, anybody that's got like a Gmail or YouTube or the suite of things that Google provides will have a Google Plus account, and that's something that's unique to you that you can populate information on and use as your one part of things that you can pull things together on. So it's quite helpful to kind of pull things together to one place and to be able to give people access to all the things that you want people to see about you together in the one place. Now, YouTube is really interesting as well, because especially for those that have looked there about, perhaps working with potential NEET learners or potentially young people with education healthcare plans kind of thing. But just broadly speaking more, it's like sometimes people have got, skill sets that are, are really advanced kind of thing in a whole range of different areas, but they might not necessarily leap off a traditional CV kind of thing in terms of their education and their employment history. So, it's about starting to think about, well, what can you get across through video and pictures and stuff to be able to show some of the really good projects that you've worked on. For example, all creative stuff, but also a lot of the more practical things like, okay, it might be about hair and beauty, or it might be about, motor vehicle mechanics or construction or something. If you can actually show an employer what you can do kind of thing and be able to record that on something like YouTube, collate the links then, and to be able to, share on the appropriate platforms, it might have far greater impact than a CV potentially. And then most of us know about things like LinkedIn as more of that career orientated network. It's about making sure that we've got a good profile and we're following the right steps on how to generate that. Then the steps for social media, using social media and job hunting, this is from Monster, and it tends to be fairly simple, but it's about, making sure that your online presence is saying generally the same thing. So making sure you know what Google says about you to start with, and the open things that are out there for people to find, and making sure there's a bit of a consistent message there about the things you're posting on Twitter, to the things that LinkedIn might say about you, to anything else that might be out there in the wide domain then that people can find about you. That there's a consistent message. Showing your skills, make sure your share is relevant and engaging. Blogging your way in, generating your content through blogs and personal websites, which I'll come back to in a moment. Building connections, linking your blogs, websites to your social media, and target specific groups, and get Twittering and get tweeting. Engage with companies that you want to work for, as a bit of a 5-step rule of thumb. As well as these different popular social media sites I mentioned here, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, there's also pretty much a social media site for anyone. And obviously this is mainly where people get opportunities that are never advertised. Pinterest is an obvious example, and that's something that's a very popular social media site. And it's basically sorry, people are saying that the video's disappeared. I don't know if you can still see the slides. Hopefully you can. With Pinterest, it's a creative network. So it basically means that anybody that might be a budding fashion designer, interior designer, artist, your photographer, you can share all your creative skills really onto things like Pinterest. And obviously so many people can access that and can see your board then really, to be able to follow you and to be able to think about, well, gosh, if you can do all that for you, let's have you doing some of that for me and my company, kind of thing. But that's the same with things like chefs and cooks. There's like Nibble Dish is a social media site for them. Lab Roots for research scientists, engineers, HR.com, for HR professionals. There's pretty much something out there for every profession, every interest. And obviously things like Flickr and Instagram that are more the widely known ones for like photography and photo sharing and editing and stuff. So do look out for those, and encourage people to find not just the obvious, but the ones that are more specific to the kind of sectors that your clients are interested in. Final one is about curating, and this is the ability to develop, review, and edit your online presence. So basically what we're saying here is, love it or hate it, everything revolves around Google, kind of thing, and other search engine sites. So if you're not on there, that there's almost a reason for suspicion these days. So it's about utilizing that to your advantage. If you know that employers are going to be screening you and seeing what your digital footprint's like when you're applying for jobs and stuff, it's about trying to use that to your advantage and putting all the good stuff out there and keeping all the not so good stuff nice and private and secure, kind of thing, so that you can use it to your advantage, turn the tables around and say, look, when you search me, this is what you're going to find, and it's going to be really good. So there are ways in which you can do that. The personal branding is something to take seriously. I mentioned before about Google Plus, to be able to have like a part of the web that's just for you, to be able to bring everything together, your social media accounts, the school article of what you did, kind of thing, the projects, the web, the newspaper articles, kind of thing. That's all the positive stuff to bring together into the one place. And that could be something like Google Plus. You can also set up something called an About Me page, which is one page to bring everything together and to link all your kind of like LinkedIn and professional stuff that you want people to see. But then you can also set up a free website of your own in a matter of minutes these days with a variety of different templates. It sounds really scary and stuff, but it's something that you can do that within a matter of minutes, really. So that there are so many, pre-populated designs to choose from, and it's just making sure you get your profile right, and you can bring in a whole range of different things. And these websites can be free as well. So, obviously, if they're free, there might be adverts that pop up on it, kind of thing. But, it's a way of getting your information out there. If you're using YouTube and you've got lots of stuff around about you, you might want to bring it together all in the same place. And you can set up, a free website to bring it together there, as long as all of the social media platforms you belong to, and to be able to use that as a place to keep referencing back to when you're getting in touch with people or following people on Twitter, to be able to give them back to your page to share more about what you do. So something like Squarespace and Simple Sites are really good examples of that. Great stuff. So I'm just I'm coming towards a close now. I noticed there's a couple of questions coming up in the chat, which we'll look at in a moment. But I just want to I've pretty much together towards the end of the slide, so I'll just finish those first. So again, with these sites here around personal branding and the things that you want people to see, there are ways in which you can make things that you want people to see appear higher in a Google search, when people type in your name. Brand Yourself is a good example of this. You can put 3 links to 3 websites that you really want people to find about you into Brand Yourself for free. And then after that, any further links you need to pay things for. And then when you put the links in, you follow the links to where it says boost there, and there's a whole series of things you can do to improve your kind of like search engine optimization, SEOs, so that page appears higher in Google and can be found better. So things like that, and there's so many of those, is really good. I just wanted to highlight as well, it's been a real whistle-stop tour into looking at different kind of like resources and stuff, and 7 C's of digital career literacy. But I wanted to finish with some of these links where you can find more information, and Barclays is the main part. But I'll share these slides so that you can find them and you can peruse those in your own time. I just wanted to close, though, with a thought around, okay, you might have listened to what we've been exploring in the last half an hour or so and thought, well, gosh, it all seems terribly technical, kind of thing. And I've got to confess that by no stretch of the imagination am I any expert in this area. I'm very much a novice, kind of thing. But it doesn't necessarily matter from a careers practitioner point of view, because it's less really about what I know, and it's more about the skills that the clients that I work with know. And for most of those, they've got quite high tech skills, but they don't know how to use their tech skills in the professional context of career and progression. So it's about combining those skills and knowledge we have as career professionals with the skills they've got or they've picked up around tech and helping them to move forward with it. So that's the kind of like closing thought I'll leave with you. So those are the things we've been covering. Digital career literacy is those 7 C's, and that's how we can really help clients to develop their career planning. And it's about making sure we give enough attention to each of the 7 C's, but we've put a bit of the spotlight today around analysing the sources of information and making sure we can look at things like communicating, role of social media, and personal brands. Thank you ever so much for listening, everyone. Now, I've noticed as well that my video might have disappeared, so I'm just going to stop sharing my slides. He says. Oh yeah, I can see myself again now. That's great. Okay, now I'm just going to pick up on a couple of questions that might have come into the chat then. So, will the slides be available on the CDI website? Absolutely. If not, contact me directly. My email address is just going into chat as we speak. Yeah, so that hopefully should be going in. Generic websites for low-level, non-supervisory roles for young people who are starting work for the first time and may have underachieved at school. I mean, there's a range of websites for this then. I think really, but it tends to be the local ones will all be around kind of like things like Facebook jobs, LinkedIn jobs. There'll be also things like the local papers, the recruitment sites kind of thing too, that they'll all be there for that. And it's about utilizing the networks and explaining more about what you're looking for and where. So, it's and obviously, career is more of a journey, of course, then it's not about landing exactly what you want straight away kind of thing. So it might well be about seasonal work or part-time work to pick up those skills and to pick up that experience and to move into that then too. So it's about thinking holistically and utilizing anything from, the national sites such as Facebook and LinkedIn, but also bringing in local media such as like your newspaper outlets kind of thing, which tend to be online these days too. Okay, so let's see what else. Particular CV templates that you recommend for year 11 school leavers. I mean, there's so many of these out there these days. So I mean, Prospects is quite a useful one. Prospects.ac is fairly basic, but it's a nice way to be able to kind of like, structure. You can download the templates, and you can also, you can also kind of like pick up some hints and tips along the way. Career Pilot is another good source for that too. Now, Helen, thank you for that. I've not come across Mandy.com before. Good network for creative professionals post-COVID. So no, I think that sounds great. So again, re-emphasizing this point that so many jobs will probably never go to advert really. So the more you can do online to get across your skills and your experiences, the more people will come to you for opportunities. So it might be like Mandy.com, About Me, or Pinterest, for creative. It's about finding the right ones for your sector, and hopefully you'll be able to get in and go far. Right, I'm conscious that it is 37 minutes past 11. I know I started a little bit later, but I think I'm probably in danger of being past my window there. So apologies for doing so. I'm just going to scroll down and see. So thank you. There's some nice comments coming through on chat there. Which I'm really grateful for. You've got my email address. So john.ambrose@complete-careers.com. If there's anything I can help with specifically, please do share into chat. I'm not in a particular hurry, but I know obviously there's far more engaging speakers coming up this afternoon and the later stages of this morning. So do feel free to disappear into the other sessions now. Equally, if you've got anything that you're burning question you want to ask, enter it into the chat and I'll be happy to try and answer. But otherwise, just email me or wait for the slides to appear through the CDI.